Throughout history, the British royal family has lived behind a curtain of splendor, secrecy, and silence. Every smile rehearsed, every scandal erased. But sometimes that curtain slips, and what we glimpse behind it changes everything we thought we knew. In the final years of Queen Victoria's reign, one name whispered through drawing rooms, across newspaper offices, and inside the marble corridors of Buckingham Palace: Prince Albert Victor. He was the man who might have been king, charming, fragile, and dangerously unpredictable. To the public, he was the heir to Britain's greatest empire. To his family, he was a worry they could never quite silence. This is the story of Prince Albert Victor, the lost prince, the scandal that haunted a throne, and the man history tried to forget. Prince Albert Victor Christian Edward, born January 8, 1864, entered the world 2 months early, so small and sickly that even Queen Victoria feared he might not live. His parents, Albert Edward, the dashing Prince of Wales, and Alexandra of Denmark, the adored but distant princess, were the golden couple of the empire. Yet their first son would never fit the image of royal perfection they needed. Nicknamed Eddie, he grew up beneath the long shadow of his father, a man known for charm, appetite, and scandal, and a mother whose hearing loss made family life strangely quiet. From infancy, Eddie seemed trapped between two worlds, adored by his mother, ignored by his father, and scrutinized by a nation. His education became a royal experiment. Tutors rotated endlessly. Some called him gentle and affectionate, others despaired. One wrote that the boy's mind was abnormally dormant, that he requires the company of his brother merely to work at all. Even his grandfather's courtiers whispered that something was not quite right, too slow to speak, too dreamy to learn, too delicate for the weight of empire. Rumours spread even then. Was the young prince deaf like his mother? Was he simple-minded or merely misunderstood? No one dared to say aloud what many suspected, that this fragile heir might never be strong enough to rule. Yet beneath the doubts, there was something disarmingly human about him. He loved animals, music, and laughter. He preferred sketching to study, kindness to command. But the Victorian world was not kind to softness. The British monarchy was built on image, on the illusion of strength, intellect, and divine purpose. A prince who hesitated, who seemed uncertain, threatened that illusion. And so, from the beginning, Albert Victor's greatest challenge wasn't enemies abroad. It was the family and society determined to shape him into something he could never truly be. By the time he was a teenager, even Queen Victoria had begun to worry. Letters reveal her frustration. "The boy must be made to work," she scolded. "He cannot drift through life as a cipher." But drift he did, into adolescence, into history, and eventually into infamy. At 13, Prince Albert Victor left the marble corridors of his sheltered life and boarded a Royal Navy training ship anchored off Dartmouth. To his tutors and family, it was an act of hope. The sea would discipline him, harden him, perhaps even save him. To Eddie, it was something else entirely: freedom. For the first time in his life, the watchful eyes of the palace were far behind him. Alongside his younger brother George, he learned to navigate, drill, and live among sailors who neither bowed nor curtsied. They called him Prince Eddie, but to many, he was just another boy trying to keep up. He was charming, curious, and hopelessly distracted. The discipline of naval life bored him, but the vastness of the world thrilled him. The voyage of the HMS Bacchante took the brothers around the globe, to the Americas, Australia, the Far East. In Japan, they were tattooed by local artists. In the Pacific, they met island kings and colonial governors who treated them like living symbols of empire. Eddie collected souvenirs and stories, not medals. He preferred music to maneuvers, laughter to orders. He was happy only when allowed to wander, one officer later recalled. By the time they returned to England 3 years later, the palace declared the experiment a success. The press printed glowing stories of the young princes who had seen the world. But those who had sailed with them knew the truth. George had thrived, Eddie had not. The future king had found his purpose. His brother had only confirmed how lost he was. In 1883, the brothers parted ways. George stayed in the Navy. Eddie was sent to Trinity College, Cambridge, a decision that would change his reputation forever. The prince, now 19, moved into rooms usually reserved for professors, accompanied by his chaplain John Dalton and a young tutor, James Kenneth Stephen. Stephen was brilliant, eccentric, and, as later biographers would suggest, deeply attached to his royal pupil. To some, it was innocent mentorship. To others, something far more intimate. Rumours of Stephen's feelings for the prince circulated quietly through the university. Whether true or not, the gossip fed into a growing narrative that Eddie was not like other men, gentle, hesitant, and surrounded by those who adored him for reasons society refused to name. Eddie himself seemed unaware of the storm forming around him. He avoided lectures, struggled with his studies, and spent long evenings at dinner with poets and dons. One of them, the writer Oscar Browning, was known for inviting handsome undergraduates to his gatherings. Eddie, handsome and shy, became a favoured guest. It was a dangerous kind of attention in an era when affection between men was spoken of only in whispers. By 1885, the prince had earned his honorary degree. It was an achievement celebrated by his family and quietly mocked by his tutors. He left Cambridge no wiser, but far more worldly, and with a growing reputation for charm, idleness, and mystery. One observer at the time described him as a man of fine presence and empty purpose. The description stung because it was true. He had beauty, grace, and lineage, but no direction. The crown's future rested on a young man who seemed curiously detached from ambition, a prince whose heart belonged not to power, but to pleasure. Yet the idle prince would soon find himself at the centre of a scandal so explosive that even his royal birth might not protect him. By the late 1880s, London was the beating heart of the world's greatest empire, a city of power, opulence, and hypocrisy. Behind its gaslit streets and gilded carriages lay another world entirely, one of secrets, indulgence, and forbidden desires. In that world, a single rumour could destroy a life. And in 1889, one such rumour reached the highest levels of the monarchy. It began in a narrow townhouse on Cleveland Street. The Metropolitan Police had stumbled upon a discreet male brothel run by Charles Hammond, catering to wealthy clients, soldiers, aristocrats, and politicians. When questioned, several young men confessed that some of their patrons were not only noble, but royal. Within weeks, whispers spread through Parliament, clubs, and the press. The name on everyone's lips, though never printed in any British paper, was Prince Albert Victor. Officially, there was no evidence, no letters, no witnesses, nothing linking the prince directly to the scandal. Yet the rumours refused to die. Some said he had been seen entering the house in disguise, others that he had been protected by powerful men who shut down the investigation before it could reach the palace gates. His alleged connection came through Lord Arthur Somerset, an equerry to the Prince of Wales, Eddie's father. Somerset was indeed named in the investigation. Terrified of exposure, his lawyer hinted that he could name someone far higher. The coded letters exchanged between government officials reveal how desperate they were to bury the story. Behind closed doors, the royal family was shaken. The Prince of Wales intervened personally, ensuring the case would never see a public trial. The prostitutes involved vanished, the records sealed. Yet every effort to silence the whispers only made them louder. Across the Atlantic, American and colonial newspapers printed what the British press could not. The New York Times mocked Eddie as a dullard and a perverse boy. French papers described him as a prince of curious habits. The rumours persisted. 60 years later, the official biographer of George V, Harold Nicholson, was told by Lord Goddard, who was a 12-year-old schoolboy at the time of the scandal, that Albert Victor had been involved in a male brothel scene and that a solicitor had to commit perjury to clear him. The solicitor was struck off the rolls for his offence, but was thereafter reinstated. For the first time, a scandal surrounding the heir to the throne became international gossip, a humiliation Queen Victoria could neither forgive nor forget. During one trip through Paris, a reporter dared to ask the prince directly about the rumours. Witnesses claimed his face turned scarlet, his composure cracking as his entourage hurried him away. He never spoke of it again, but the damage was done. Within the corridors of Buckingham Palace, trust in Albert Victor began to erode. Courtiers whispered that he had become a liability, too naive, too careless. Even his family, long accustomed to covering their own indiscretions, grew nervous. The Queen's letters turned cold. His father, once indulgent, became distant. The heir who might one day be king now stood one scandal away from disgrace. To protect him, the palace devised a plan. They would send the prince abroad, officially on a goodwill tour of India, unofficially into exile. The hope was simple. Distance would cool the rumours, and time would restore his reputation. But the voyage that followed would only deepen the mystery. In the autumn of 1889, London's whispers followed Prince Albert Victor all the way to the docks at Southampton. Officially, the journey was a royal goodwill tour, a 7-month visit to India and the East to represent the crown. Unofficially, it was a quiet exile. The palace needed distance between the prince and the scandal still smouldering in the capital. For Albert Victor, it was another chance to play the part of a prince in the public eye, far from the icy stares of his grandmother, Queen Victoria. He sailed first to Athens, then through the Suez Canal and down the Red Sea to Bombay, arriving amid fanfare and blazing sun. Everywhere he went, the empire displayed its wealth and loyalty. In Hyderabad, the Nizam hosted banquets of gold and silk. In Calcutta, processions lined the streets. The British press praised his dignity and charm. Behind the diplomatic smiles, however, the prince seemed detached, even lonely. One observer wrote, "His manners are gracious, but his eyes are far away." In Bangalore, he laid the foundation stone of the glass house at the Lalbagh Gardens. In Burma, he hunted tigers and elephants, a ritual of imperial dominance that filled newspapers back home with admiration. But beneath the headlines, there were murmurs, stories that the tour was less a triumph and more a carefully managed performance meant to keep him out of sight until the storm in London passed. During this glittering exile, the prince met a woman who would later plunge his name into new controversy, Marjorie Haddon, the wife of a British engineer. Their meeting was brief, but years later she would claim that her son, Clarence, was Albert Victor's child. The palace dismissed her as delusional, a tragic woman driven by drink and fantasy. Still, when she brought her claim to England decades later, it was investigated in secret by Scotland Yard. Documents show that even while officials dismissed her, they admitted the prince had some relations with her, though they denied paternity. The story never appeared in newspapers, but it added another stain to a name already shadowed by rumour. For Albert Victor himself, India was both escape and reflection. In letters home, he seemed weary of ceremony and eager for simplicity. "The people are kind," he wrote, "but I miss the air of home." He admired the palaces, the elephants, the music, but confessed that all of it feels like acting. He was playing the role of the dutiful heir while privately slipping further from the image the empire demanded. When he finally returned to England in 1890, he was showered with titles: Duke of Clarence and Avondale, Earl of Athlone, as though new honours could erase old suspicions. But behind the polished medals and cheering crowds, the distance between the prince and his destiny only widened. He was 26, elegant, polite, and perpetually uncertain. The gossip of Cleveland Street still clung to him, even as the palace staged his redemption. And for the Queen, there was only one way to secure his future and the family's image. He must marry. By the early 1890s, the palace had one goal left for Prince Albert Victor: to make him respectable. Marriage, they believed, would fix everything. It always did. A royal wedding could bury scandals, silence rumours, and turn headlines of disgrace into hymns of duty. For the young Duke, however, love would never be so simple. In 1891, Albert Victor wrote to Lady Sybil St. Clair Erskine that he was in love once again, though he does not say with whom. A week after the first letter, he asked Erskine, "I wonder if you really love me a little. I should be very pleased if you did just a little bit." Then the Queen herself took command. Her first choice was her granddaughter, Princess Alix of Hesse, the shy and pious girl who would later marry Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. At Balmoral, Albert Victor dutifully proposed. Alix, barely out of her teens, turned him down with gentle firmness. She liked him as a cousin, she said, but nothing more. The rejection wounded him deeply. For all his charm, he seemed to inspire pity more often than passion. After her proposed match with Alix fell through, the Queen suggested to Albert Victor that he marry another first cousin, Princess Margaret of Prussia. On the 19th of May 1890, she sent him a formal letter in which she expressed her opinions about Margaret's suitability to become queen. "Of the few possible princesses, for of course any lady in society would never do, I think no one more likely to suit you and the position better than your cousin Mossy. She is not regularly pretty, but she has a very pretty figure, is very amiable, and half English, with great love for England, which you will find in very few, if any others." But his mother, Princess Alexandra, objected. Margaret was too German, too rigid, too wrong. The match quietly vanished, and the prince found himself once again adrift. Then came the one woman he truly loved, Princess Hélène of Orléans, daughter of the exiled French claimant to the throne. Hélène was lively, romantic, and unafraid of scandal. Against all expectation, she and Albert Victor fell genuinely in love. Letters between them reveal a tenderness absent from his life until then. "He is kind," she wrote to a friend, "and sad in a way that makes one wish to protect him. He offered to renounce his right to the throne if it meant he could marry her. Hélène offered to convert to the Church of England to make it possible, but her father refused. The Pope forbade the union. Even Queen Victoria, who had briefly supported the idea, eventually surrendered to politics. The dream was over. "He is mine in death," Hélène later said softly. When he died, she sent a small coin he had once given her to be buried with him around his neck. After Hélène came Princess Mary of Teck, known to her family as May. She was steady, intelligent, and everything the royal family wanted in a future queen. In December 1891, to her astonishment, Albert Victor proposed. Their engagement was announced with fanfare across Britain. The court buzzed with relief. Finally, the erratic prince was settling down. And yet, those close to him saw the shadows that lingered. His letters to friends were filled with doubt. "I wonder if I am made for all this," he wrote. He adored Mary, but there was a melancholy distance in him, a quiet dread that the crown he was born for would never sit easily on his head. Still, the empire prepared to celebrate. The wedding was set for February 1892. Portraits were commissioned, carriages polished, choirs rehearsed. For the first time, the future seemed within reach. A new chapter awaited him: redemption, love, and the possibility of peace. But fate had other plans. Just 6 weeks before the ceremony, a bitter winter swept across England. A deadly influenza outbreak moved through the countryside, reaching Sandringham, the royal estate where the prince and his family had gathered. Albert Victor caught the fever first. At first, his doctors were hopeful. Then, his condition worsened overnight. Within days, the man once destined to be king was gasping for breath, his family helpless around his bed. 1892. The air in Norfolk was heavy and still, the countryside blanketed in snow. Inside Sandringham House, the laughter and bustle of the royal family had faded into whispers. Prince Albert Victor, the heir once meant to inherit an empire, lay burning with fever. The doctors called it influenza, the same epidemic sweeping through Britain, but those who saw him in those final days would later whisper that something felt different. He had been ill before, often frail, often distant, but this time the decline was sudden and unstoppable. Within days, the fever turned to pneumonia. His fiancée, Princess Mary of Teck, arrived at his bedside, her eyes red from sleepless nights. His mother, Alexandra, refused to leave the room, clutching his hand as if she could hold him back from the edge. The future of the monarchy seemed to hang on each shallow breath. And then, on the morning of January 14th, the fight was over. Prince Albert Victor, Duke of Clarence and Avondale, was dead at 28. The news spread across the empire like a shudder. Flags lowered, church bells tolled, black crape draped the gates of Buckingham Palace. To the public, it was tragedy, the loss of a beloved young prince. Queen Victoria herself wrote that, "The calamity is too dreadful, my poor darling boy." Yet behind closed doors, the grief was more complicated. For some within the royal circle, his death was both heartbreak and relief. The most troublesome heir in generations had vanished before he could ever take the throne. Whispers began almost immediately. Some said he had died of pneumonia. Others insisted it was something darker, that his fragile body had finally succumbed to years of quiet illness, or that the palace had chosen discretion over disgrace. A few even murmured that it was an act of mercy, that the scandalous prince had been silenced to preserve the crown. There was no proof, of course, only the uncomfortable truth that many found comfort in his absence. His funeral at St. George's Chapel was one of the most sombre in Victorian memory. Thousands lined the road to Windsor as the coffin, draped in white and purple, passed in silence. Princess Mary walked behind it, pale and still. In her letters, she would later call him "my dear one," too gentle for his time. His brother, Prince George, was inconsolable. They had been raised side by side, and now one would wear the crown meant for the other. In the months that followed, the royal family closed ranks. The archives were sealed, letters vanished, rumours, however, did not. What had truly killed Albert Victor, disease, despair or design, would never be answered.